Hey trackies, welcome back to another video here on TXT Track Time. Please remember to like the video and also subscribe to the channel. Oh trackies, I'm here to give y'all some lashings. You know why? Because I actually can. And in this moment you'd say, T, you should remain humble and gracious. No. I'm gonna come out here and lash you all because you stay lashing me on the channel. So I will do it in this particular moment. Now, I watched a very interesting interview conducted by TVJ. Now, interestingly as well, the video was on my timeline for a bit. And I said to myself, I'm not going to watch this one because it's pretty much probably going to be the same thing. Sports Max asked Stephen Francis. So I probably won't learn anything new. But guess what, track is? I gave in, I crumbled, and I watched anyway because it's track and field. So I'm going to watch, right? And interesting. Look like God did that guide me and God said, go and go watch a video. Even though you may think it's the same thing, watch it same way. And guys, when I tell you Stephen Francis vindicated my thoughts and then some. And I'm here, as I said, to say, give me my tens, please and thank you. As a matter of fact, no please and thanks, just give me my tens. All right, I see why people say I'm cuckoo. But anyway, Shaki, Stephen Francis was asked a specific question as it relates to the comparison between Asafa Powell and Kishane Thompson based on the numbers. Now, earlier on in the season, I did do a breakdown of Kishane Thompson. And I said it took me a while to get a feel of this particular athlete. But the more I thought about it and the more I dug into Kishane Thompson, because there was not much to go on, given, his short time in the sport and track and field, I just got this stark resemblance to Asafa Powell. And then I went on to further say, track is that, hey, you know what? He could be even a better version of Asafa Powell, given the amount of years that Stephen Francis has now been in the game and everything that he's learned to now apply to Kishane Thompson. We could very well see a better version. And here we have Stephen Francis vindicating me and saying the exact same thing as it relates to Kishane Thompson. Track is, please take a listen.
You've also trained some top class male sprinters, including Asafa Paul, who got that world record in 2004-5, first going 977. Are there any similarities in Kishane and Asafa, and how do they measure up when you look at the numbers?
Well, I think that they are very, very similar, except that Kishane is ahead of where Asafa was at each stage in terms of he is a very powerful athlete. He has problems or potential problems with his weight, depending on his discipline, and they're very similar people. But I think the difference between Asafa and Kishane is that now, 15 years later, in spite of Mr. Riley things, we have a far more sophisticated and analytic setup, so which would allow him, I think, to be better for his talent than Asafa was.
All right, so track is that was Stephen Francis, the voice of Stephen Francis, and that is what he had to say about Kishane Thompson, pretty much vindicating exactly my thought process as it relates to a Kishane Thompson and how he could potentially progress in this 2024 season, given what happened last year, and then when I made a direct correlation with what happened with Asafa Powell and his breakout season, plus what happened the following year, and that is why I spoke to him not only potentially running a 9.7, but we could very well even see Kishane Thompson run in 9.6. That is the uptake for a Kishane Thompson. Clearly all this banks on the health of Kishane Thompson, but once he remains healthy, once he's able to get good training in, then this is the trajectory that Kishane Thompson is on. And then Stephen Francis even went on to further say, hey, depending on what Kishane Thompson does at the trials, coming up, next week, We will see definitely a better version of him once he makes the team to Paris, in Paris itself, for 2024. And for those who conveniently forget my thoughts, and let me remind y'all, these are my thoughts because I was the first one to compare, Kishane to Asafa Powell to the point where y'all called me crazy. But now everybody under the sun now is making those comparisons, and I don't see anybody calling anybody else crazy. But yes, when T said it way back, earlier on the season, I was crazy. But let me just remind you of what I was saying. Here is a beautiful flashback of me talking about Kishane Thompson back earlier on in the year, whichever month it was that I put that video out, but it was earlier on in the year. Now, track is, I believe that Stephen Francis is over there cooking up a monster that could be virtually, potentially much better than Asafa Powell. Yes, Trackies, you heard it. Much better than the former world record holder, Jamaica's very own Asafa Powell, the sub 10 king. But Trackies, follow me, down this rabbit hole, and I'll tell you why I believe that Kishane Thompson could end up being a much better version. Or, you know what? I don't want to say Asafa Powell 2.0, but that coaches get better over time once they're coaching and see things that they could have done better. I believe that whatever Stephen Francis was coaching Asafa Powell back in the day, he has improved on that, and he's now going to create a monster in Kishane Thompson that's going to end up superseding, in my opinion, times that Asafa Powell has run, and of course become a major, major factor in world sprinting in the men's 100 meters. So, track is, when I look back at Asafa Powell back in 2004, I would say he was roughly around the same age as Kishane Thompson is right now. You could say give or take a few months slash a year, track is, but still roughly the same age. So right now, Kishane Thompson is 22. Track is, so with that said, right now, Kishane Thompson is a 9.85 second sprinter. And then back in 2004, Asafa Powell was a 9.87 seconds sprinter. But what I found interesting about these two athletes in terms of their performances was that Asafa Powell was building into 2004. So we could see from back into even 2003, he was running a lot of 100 meters. So he didn't really come out of nowhere. You could say his times really shocked us back in 2004, but still, he didn't really quote unquote come out of nowhere and just shock you, because you could see the growth, the consistent performances from Asafa from all the way back in 2003. Even 2002, you may even say track is, but you could see the constant incremental growth from him, before he got to that eventual 9.87 seconds. But track is, for Kishane Thompson, it's completely different. He was in high school back in 2020, I believe, before he joined MVP track is. And one thing to note is that apparently he is very, very injury prone, so he was not able to train the way a typical athlete just starting out would be able to train, and as such clearly not able to run as much races. But in 2023 that we see here, track is, he came out firing, shocking everybody. 9.91 seconds out of nowhere, right, track is. But then that was it for the rounds. No more running at our national championships. Then of course we heard from Stephen Francis saying, listen, he's fine, but we're only preparing him for one-off runs. So interesting to me, trackies, is that with only a handful of races, trackies, Kishane Thompson was able to get all the way down to 9.85 seconds towards the end of this 2023 season, and also towards the end of the 2004 season, trackies, Asafa Powell was able to run 9.87 seconds. So that is pretty much what we see happening for both athletes, trackies, in what we would consider their breakout year. But as I said, most interesting of note is that Asafa Powell was building. He didn't just, go from nothing to something, trackies. He literally was a 10.12 sprinter in 2002. Then in 2003, he was a 10.02 athlete. Then in 2004, he was a 9.87 second sprinter. Then when we go and look at Kishane Thompson, trackies, there's not much progression to talk about, because again, as I said, he literally is just beginning. There's a blank year for him in 2021, But he's gone from running 10.21 seconds in 2022 to 9.85 seconds in 2023. Trackies, that is a huge gap. In sprinting terms, that's a lot, trackies, especially again for an athlete that is not able to, or, prior to this 2023 season, not able to run as much because, again, he is injury prone. Now, trackies, when I think about the fact that in just a handful of races, he's been able to go to 9.85 seconds. And what's going to happen when he has a full season as is expected in 2024? Based on what Stephen Francis is saying, he sounds to me like he's preparing Kishane Thompson for the Olympic year, which means that track is in this Olympic year, we are going to see a Kishane Thompson that's able to train with the regular regimen, whatever that regular regimen is for 100-meter sprinters. He'll be able to hopefully manage that track is. And once he's able to manage that track is, we are going to see potentially much faster times. No, I talked about Asafa Poel back in 2004 running 9.87. No, right after that track is, Asafa went straight into breaking the world record, running 9.77 seconds the following year. So track is Asafa with incremental growth was able to go from 9.87 seconds to 9.77 seconds. You can see the growth and, of course, the consistency. Though when you look at Kishane Thompson, that has not been able to race as much as Asafa Poel, but still being able to lay down super fast times. What do you think is going to happen in 2024? Well, track is, I'm going to say no. Kishane Thompson is going to come out a monster of an athlete. Now, back then, Asafa was running 9.77. But track is, with all of this better coaching, again, coaches grow and develop as well. He could potentially, track is, be in the low 9.7s next season, potentially even a 9.6. Track is, it's crazy, but here why? We all know that Asafa Powell not only, is sub 10 king, trackies, but he is also known for something else, trackies. Arguable trackies, and arguably by, maybe non-Jamaicans because they're trying to eke in, their favorite sprinters, but who cares? But I believe that most Jamaicans think that Asafa Powell is the best technical 100-meter sprinter ever, right? And this has always been the case for Asafa Poel. From back in the day when I was watching him on my TV screen, trackies, he's always been a technically phenomenal sprinter over that 100-meter distance. Now, when we go over this and we look at Kishane now, trackies, Kishane reached this yet? Kishane has not reached that level in terms of technicality over that sprinting distance just yet. There, in my opinion, is a lot of room for improvement. So when I think about the room for improvement technically over the event, plus, getting a full season in of training track is, what do we think will happen with Kishane Thompson in 2024?